And so we come to step 10 in this F7 coverage of how you might do a big, challenging consolidation question in 10 easy steps. So the question approach, the marks, how you convert into minutes, how you prepare your blank, empty CSFP, think about the associate as well at the same time, group structure, the investment check as well, consolidation adjustments, big marks for that, time apportionment, and this particular question was quite nasty with the seasonal variation for the associate. Then you have your net assets list, then the valuation of the associate, which is absolutely straightforward. Then you have the big three, which is like a gift of big marks. Goodwill, NCI, consolidated reserves. Notice, I don't do any T accounts, that old-fashioned way of doing it, even though as a student years ago, that's what I was taught. But one has to move with the times to see where the examiner's at these days. And then completing the CSFP. That is my last concern. So you open up your consolidated statement of financial position. Don't forget the seasonal variation was a bit nasty with this question. It may not come up in the exam, though. Might not. Consolidated statement of financial position. Don't forget the associate. You must ignore the associate, except that you bring it in as a one-line item, also known as the equity method. So this is also known as the equity method. And that, of course, is IS 28, International Standard number 28. And so that's my putting together of the consolidated statement of financial position. Don't forget the parent, 520 for PP. PP stands for property, plant, equipment. That comes from the question, as does the 280. So you must bring in the entire subsidiary. You mustn't bring in 80% only. All of the subsidiary. All the parent, all of the subsidiary. But you ignore the associate. But the associate comes in a bit later as a one-line item. And don't forget the fair value adjustment and the depreciation. The goodwill, of course, is absolutely straightforward. It's based on a working. The brand, if you remember, went up by 25 and you took away 5 amortization. The investments went up and went down. Went up by 5 for the parent and went down by 3 for the subsidiary. And then the investment in associate, this is collected into and shown as a one item, and not spread throughout the CSFP. So unlike a subsidiary, where you bring in the property, plant and equipment and the current assets, etc., with the associate, you don't spread it all over. You do a special working, and it comes through as just the one item. The current assets, similarly, the inventory, the trade receivables and cash and bank, nothing to it. Remember, the associate is left out. The PUP, of course, just show it right at the end. Whoever sold to whoever, the PUP does end up in the inventory as a deduction. Don't forget, if the parent sells to the subsidiary, the charge for the PUP, the reduction of profits, goes to the parent's reserves in the consolidated reserves account. As far as the other situation is concerned where the subsidiary sells to the parent, that of course the PUP goes into the net assets, as I show you on the more detailed tapes where I cover the entire syllabus. That's quite easy, wasn't it? Second half of the CSFP, what can I say? You bring in the parent's own only. Don't bring in the subsidiaries or the associate, just the parents. And of course, because the parent has issued some shares to acquire the associate, and those shares haven't yet been recorded, you must bring them in now. Absolutely straightforward, as indeed with the SP, the share premium. So the 100 plus 45 is the share premium total. Meanwhile, of course, the share capital total is 575. And then finally, the consolidated retained earnings is 247. And the NCI, of course, is 91. And that figure I take through, well, that's the grand total anyway. I take that through to the non-current liabilities, adding in the 180 and the 20, the loan notes, and the current liabilities, of course. All very straightforward indeed. So I thought I'd put together, even though the print is quite small, I thought I'd put together the first half of the CSFP. So do have a look at that. Notice where the associate goes in just as a one-line item. And as far as the second half of the CSFP is concerned, you bring in the share capital, the share premium, and the various bits and pieces. So please revise that. Exam technique. I'm a great believer in exam technique. I was very strong in exam technique myself as a student, even though when I did the exams where the syllabus was much smaller, I still think technique was important then, even more important today, where the questions are slightly, certainly the syllabus is a bit bigger. Exam technique. Keep a full 45 minutes for the consolidation question and promise to yourself to keep 8 to 10 minutes to actually do the CSFP. I'll tell you why. There are marks available for copying out figures from the original question. For example, that current assets section, the non-current assets, PP, all those kinds of things come straight from the question much of the time. There are, of course, some adjustments. So keep 8 to 10 minutes. So you have about 35 minutes to do the workings. When you're doing published accounts, which is question 2, I would say keep a few more minutes because the construction of an income statement and an SFP is usually required. So I would probably keep about 15 minutes rather than 8 to 10. 15 minutes for that last step, which means my workings have got to be done in about 30 minutes. Just a few tips that I would like to share with you. A note of caution from the F7 examiner. I copied this out from a real examiner's feedback. As you know, it's published in the Student Accountant magazine. Some candidates who are perhaps running low on time give a blank pro forma answer, for example, to the income statement and the statement of financial position. Such an answer would gain little, if any, marks. The examiner is saying he might give 0 for that, him and his team of markers, and is therefore a waste of time. The examiner is saying your method is a waste of time. So many students say to me, let me just write out a blank format without any numbers, and I'll get a few marks for knowing the format. The examiner at F7 says, well, that really belongs to F3. At F3 level, some very foundational skills are quite useful to impress the examiner with. But at F7, what he's saying is just put in one line of a description with a number, and I'll actually give you some marks, rather than writing out an entire blank format and getting nothing for it. Be careful. It would be far better, this is all examiner's language, it would be far better, says Steve Scott to you, the student, to complete the numerical elements of only part of a required question than to produce a complete statement with no figures. So do have a read of that carefully again, please. Okay, what else? Presentation, critical to exam success. Make an effort to ensure your answer stands out and is easy to mark, stands out from the crowd. And so there you are, your 10 steps. The valuation of the associate is extremely important. The big 3, even more marks. And don't forget, you need to keep time aside to complete the consolidated statement of financial position. Just last week, someone asked me, if I just do my workings, would that be enough to pass? And I say, maybe, because, there are lots of marks there. But the easiest marks to come by is devoted to the last step, where you're copying from the question a few items that are unadjusted. So your question paper reproduced onto your main answer with a few adjustments is where you are hoping to get to. That's how to answer an exam standard question in 10 easy steps. I hope you found this useful. Best wishes for your F7 exam. That's my name there, Francis Braganza. I teach at Lsbf, interactive of course. And feel free to join us if you can. And you'll see there the benefit of my quarter of a century of teaching this subject. All my class notes, all my working papers, etc. I've typed up and published given to the college, so every student will benefit from it. I'll be delighted to see you on my courses. All the very best, even if you can't come on our courses. Thank you.